Greetings, fellow humans, and welcome back to This Week in Indies. For this week, we're going to be talking about getting things done, or more so, when do you know your work is done? When is it time to let it go out into the world? Are there rituals, traditions, superstitions, tricks, tips, anything that you use to find this sweet spot when you know you're done? We'll discuss this and more with our roundtable discussion panel. Afterwards, Seal Cannon will be along with another indie connection, connecting you to indie books you might like if you're a fan of Anne of Green Gables. Lastly, we're going to spend the final 5 minutes with Madilynn Dale as she shares with us a small taste of Book 2 in the Ember Series, Blue Flames. So sit back, get ready to chat, and grab some tea with me, your host, JD Estrada. That is not a bad intro if I do say so myself. Greetings, fellow humans, and welcome to This Week in Indies. I am your host for today, JD Estrada. I am a Puerto Rican indie author who has tea and water and all the go indie goodness. Today we're going to be talking about when is your work done? When is your book ready? When is your poem ready? When is anything that you do ready? Because that answer changes from time to time. I'm also the author of 19 books, and I have a wonderful panel of judges here. Oh Lord, we're in an American Idol or something. A wonderful panel of authors. So I'm gonna let everyone introduce them. Let's bring them on in. Let's start with Madilynn Dale, and let's work around clockwise to do like responsible adults, and I can try my tea.
Nice. Well, hey guys. Madilynn Dale here. You can actually see the background a little bit today with my crazy chaos of office/playroom. I am going, it's weird not being the host, but I'm really excited for JD to lead this morning. Yeah, I'm a fantasy romance mixed genre author. I've got a couple of books out there, not 100% sure off the top of my head the number. Recently went to co-sign with Adam down here and had a blast. And yeah, I've got a new book dropping Tuesday, the 31st, which is actually my son's 5th birthday too. So special day. And I've also got a new short story that's going to be dropping that I will be shared in my newsletter last night. So if you want to get future early goodies, sign up there, and I'll be dropping more info on that in my Facebook group later. So yeah, talk too much.
No such thing. Sean, how about you?
I'm professionally, I'm SM Hillman, or most people, my name is Sean. I am a speculative fiction author. I was published in the Obscura anthology a couple of years ago, and I've got another novella coming out this year in another anthology that's horror. My blog, you can find my blog over at thewickedboys.com. And I also do some indie RPG designs, and I did reviews for EN World. So if you're a fan of EN World, or N World as some people call it, some of my reviews for RPGs are over there. And this year's going to be a busy year, so hopefully next time I'll have more news.
Yeah, I'm David Green. I'm from Galway in Ireland. I write epic fantasy and urban fantasy. And yeah, I'm really happy to be on the panel today. And it's my birthday tomorrow. I'm 40 tomorrow, so it's my birthday weekend. So I'm a little bit drunk. I was out drinking just before coming onto the panel.
Just a little bit.
Just a little. We have to fit in these social engagements around the important stuff of being on This Week in Indies.
So it's a great day to ask inappropriate questions specifically to David. Anyone else is going to answer inappropriately, but David is going to be perfect. Exactly. How about you, Adam?
So my name is Adam Gaffin. I am a science fiction author, editor, published an anthology. I got another one that AC and I are working on. That Madilynn was in the first one. She's going to be in the second one. And yeah, like she said, just came back from cosign. You can find my blog at CassidyChronicles.com right below me. And I'll be talking with Maddie later this week on her show Character Driven about the young lady who's standing over my shoulder.
Hey guys, I am CL Cannon, aka Courtney Cannon. I own Fiction Atlas Press and do a lot of things here on Go Indie Now, like the Indie Connection and the monthly marketing tip, and sometimes I write fantasy and sci-fi. We've got the YA Sci-Fi Addicts group has an anthology that I was in, Ink and Incantation, and we're getting ready to do a Kickstarter for that next month. So I'm really excited about that and really excited to be here on the panel today.
Awesome. Very good. And very lovely to have everyone here. So to start this off, I want each of you, you guys decide who's going to go first, to tell us about your first release, that first time when you actually clicked the publish button, which at least for me gave me a little bit of heartburn, a little bit of trepidation, a little bit of pause. And actually there was a little bit of back and forth, because as I got used to it, I realized that the first time that I clicked publish, I had to click unpublish. So how about you guys, that first release, when was this? How was the process? Tell us a bit about the book. And when did you know that you were done with the book?
Okay, I'll jump in there first. So my first book, I definitely probably should not have hit publish as quickly as I did. Holy crap, did I learn a lot after. There was a lot of anxiety and like, holy crap, it's out there. Like, people could actually get this and read this on Amazon if they want to. Yeah, I had to go back and do a lot of changes to it, a lot more editing. But what I thought was ready was not ready. Yeah, so I mean, now the process is different, but holy cow, the anxiety, nervousness, and like almost like a little adrenaline boost, only to later be like, oh snap, I need to like fix this. It's terrible kind of thing happened. So yeah.
Who else wants to go?
For me, the first time, so it wouldn't necessarily be the publish button, but the send was really, I'd been through the highs and the lows. I tend to write up to the last minute, which we could call procrastination, but I like to think of as a process. So it's, I have a couple hours before I can get the submission in. I read it for like the fourth time in the last 2 hours. I'm like, okay, it's as ready as it's going to be. And so I send it off, and I feel there is an adrenaline rush. You feel really high, like, oh, this is great. This is the best writing I've ever done. And the story obviously got published, but then I was looking at it the other day. I'm like, oh gosh, I really probably should have edited this a few more times before I sent it off. But I think that, like they say, perfect is the enemy of good, and perfect is certainly the enemy of getting it submitted on time. So I just started to learn to live with the fact that every story or book will hopefully be better than the last, and live with those regrets.
Regrets, I've had a few. Who else wants to take it on? I do have my, beyond what I mentioned, I published digitally, and then it took me a while so that I could get the print version to where I wasn't embarrassed. How about Courtney, Adam?
The print version is definitely a whole different ballgame compared to, especially with the way, because when I started, I used KDP to like format all this stuff, but like doing the print, it's so different. Even now that I'm formatting everything myself, you have to make sure things look right, and then every time you have to make sure you look at the preview, because some things will get in there and you're like, how the heck did that get there? So yeah.
Yeah, and publishing the print is an ongoing, it's an ongoing learning curve. I'm still learning things, and I've been throwing stuff up on Amazon for 11 years now. Yeah, and that gets back to actually something Sean was saying about writing it right up to the last moment, and looking at it and looking at how much you've changed as a writer, because the first things I put up there were actually a couple of short stories I had written in the voice of Arthur Conan Doyle. So I was consciously imitating somebody else's style, which means I haven't gone back and actually done a heck of a lot with them. They're still floating around out there. There's the adrenaline rush, and there's also a huge sense of relief and panic. And did I forget something? And then oh yes, you did forget something. Oh boy, time to upload a new version.
I can imagine. How about you, Courtney?
Most of my published work is in short story format. But I've also published lots of anthologies. I think we're up to number 11 now. So as being like a manager of all of that and trying to make sure you present the best product to the reader, that's it's really nerve-wracking. You're trying to make sure that it's just the best that it can be and that nobody can find fault with it. But there's always going to be someone who finds something wrong with it. But I'm very meticulous about going over everything. I edit something, I give it back to the authors, then I proofread it again, and then we have beta readers like looking at it after that. Like there's a long process of trying to make it the best that it can be. But it's always a little bit scary putting stuff out there and seeing, what the public's going to think of it and if it's good enough. And like others have said, the more you do it, the better you get at it. Like print and ebook formatting, I use Vellum, so it's really simple now. So it doesn't take me as long, and it's a lot easier than it used to be. That first time was really complicated. Like doing it in Word was not fun.
I still do it in Word because I'm old school and stupid like that. So the next question we've kind of touched upon, but I want to flip it. The question is, were you more excited or scared when you published? Here's the flip. If you know someone who's scared and excited, or scared or excited, or more scared probably than excited, what would you tell them to try to set them a little bit at ease?
It's not the end of the world. It really isn't. You're gonna screw up. There are gonna be mistakes. Look, I'm a ventriloquist. You're gonna make mistakes. And all you can do is you can find them and fix them, and find them and fix them, and find them and fix them. When those grammatical errors pop up that weren't there because nobody caught them, and you and your editor and your beta readers all went over it with a fine-tooth comb, and it wasn't there, and it somehow grew out of nothing, don't worry about it. Upload a new version, move on.
Yep, that is so true.
Indeed. I work in advertising, and the level of filters that there are in that process, and still sometimes something happens because no one noticed one mistake. We're only human, people.
Yeah, and I mean, like Adam said, you can go back and fix it. And even traditional publishers, like I can't tell you how many like superstar authors that are these big, huge booksellers. I've gone through and read their books. I'm like, wait, this is weird. There's like something like on occasion, which I mean, a lot of it I just kind of ignore because as an author, I know how hard it is to go through it with a fine-tooth comb and stuff still get missed. But like you can occasionally see words are differently formatted than the ones next to it. Not so much like italics versus non-italic, but like it just like, I don't know, it's weird. I know some of you guys probably know exactly what I'm talking about, but it's hard to explain. But I'm definitely one of those that was terrified when I hit the publish button, and yeah, you just got to go from there and just learn as you go.
Yeah, I'm a little bit different because just to answer the kind of last question as well, I work with a small indie press, so I don't actually have to do any of this stuff myself, which is great because it sounds terrifying to have to like kind of upload everything and format it for yourself and all this kind of stuff. So the publisher does that for me. But with that in mind, and that said, there is then that thing where you are relying on other people to kind of do stuff. So there is that extra level of there's extra levels of eyes looking at things, but then there's also things that are out of your hands, or there's things that you've noticed and you have to kind of rely on someone else to do it basically when it gets to a certain point. And with all that kind of stuff, with like hit and publish and rectifying mistakes, because there is always mistakes. It's something that's out of your hands, which is like a blessing and a curse, because I could easily just jump on and fix it myself, but obviously I can't because it's with a publisher. So you have to kind of wait for those people to kind of do all that kind of stuff. So there's definitely a blessing. There's less pressure in a way of it all being on you as the author. There would be for a lot of people that are self-published, but on the other hand, there is more of that kind of pressure of where it's like, I really hope this person will do these things that need to be done on time and correctly and all that kind of stuff as well. So it's a strange kind of deal with that. But I think I would lose my mind if I had to do everything myself. I think I would never sleep.
Honestly, most of our art, I think, kind of analogy to mashed potatoes. Mashed potatoes that are really smooth were not made, obviously not made at home. If you're doing mashed potatoes by yourself, there are lumps, there are imperfections, and that's how your book and story is going to be. It's going to have lumps. It's going to be imperfections. As long as it tastes good going down, it really doesn't matter, right? And I think too, you look back on. Tend to look back on books as past relationships, the good ones, hopefully. And yeah, you look back and not everything's perfect. But at the same time, you can also realize that you've made your art and people have paid you for your art and people are reading your art, and that's amazing, right? So no matter how imperfect it may feel to you, someone loves that story. That's one of the things I learned. Some people were amazed at the story I wrote, and that's a wonderful feeling. So there's a lot of good that comes with the bad.
That's something that a lot of people forget, that there is good,
And
because people focus on the bad.
And who's going to remember it? Like, there's so many books out there. They're going to remember it for a day that you've got like an error or something in there. And then they're going to move on to the next book. And you're going to still be there obsessing about it. So it's not as huge of a deal as you really think it is. I mean, if your book is riddled with errors, you definitely want to fix that. If it's one, just fix it, upload your new version, and move on with your life, just like your readers moving on with their life. It's not worth stressing out too much over.
I kind of love this comment by Karina also, because it sounds like the BS rather than the big six. And sometimes the big six can be a little bit of a BS.
Yeah.
I remember reading, it's a book I've mentioned before, Peter and the Starcatchers. It's a series that has two authors. This is Disney Hyperion. So how many editors and people are there? And I counted over 25 typos. And I stopped counting at a certain, and I'm like, this is two people, this is Disney, etc. And then if you're indie and you have one typo, people give you grief.
Yeah.
To Kingdom Come.
Uh-huh.
Although TikTok has been bringing to light more of those traditional published books errors, and I mean those I try not to comment on, because I'm like, it happens. Like you said, we're human. Like, we're not perfect, but like, if they've been through that many sets of eyes, I mean, they shouldn't have like 25 plus. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think this plays into Daniel's comment. He says that he still rereads his first book and finds issues. And it had 4 different editors. Big 6 books have typos and issues. And I think it depends on the project. And sometimes everything's kosher, everything's perfect. Other times, stuff happens and keeps happening and keeps happening.
Mm-hmm.
See, I have a theory. I think that typos grow from excess punctuation. Whenever there's too much punctuation in a book, it's like an egg. It'll, sooner or later it'll grow and it'll sprout into a typo.
That sounds like a story idea I want to read, man. It starts perfect grammatically, and by the end, it's just gibberish.
And people's brains fill in the gaps though a lot of the time, and that's part of the thing is when you're kind of when you're the writer, you're too close to the stuff, so you don't see it, and it's not your job to edit either. Like, and that's one of the things when I first started learning to write, when I was mainly doing short stories. I was trying to send completely perfect manuscripts off for anthologies and what have you, and you want to do your best, but at the end of the day, it's not that isn't the writer's job. It's the editor's job to do that, and it's the proofreader's job to make it perfectly edited. But when the bigger typos, unless it's something that's really kind of technical to the story or to the world, if it's like a place that you've created or a character's name that's a little bit unusual or whatever, it's usually little things like missing words like to or and or there or that or whatever, because your brain fills in the gaps. And when it does go through some of those many passes, people are looking at the big picture stuff. They're looking at how it works as a story. They're looking to make sure that the flow of the sentence is right. And that's the little things that are always missed. And that's why they'll always be missed, because your brain does the work for you. And whoever's looking at it, they know that these words, it's like a silent word. It's like Stephen King with his seds, that they're almost unseen because your brain expects them to be there. Yeah, there will always be typos in work, and it's like as Maddie said, like indies are held to a different standard to traditional ones, because for whatever reason, a traditionally published book could have multiple typos, and an indie one could have one or two, and it's the indie ones that get the focus because there is that there's a higher standard of threshold for mistakes, I think. For whatever reason, but like they're always going to exist because of our brains, the way our brains work when we're reading information. So that's who we can blame, is how we're wired, I suppose.
I think one detail is that going back to Microsoft Word, I don't know other software, but if you do track changes, if you just click accept and you don't read the thing back, that's when a lot of mistakes happen, because when you're reading in a track changes, depending on the setting, maybe it reads perfectly. But when you read it clean and without any of the changes and any of the highlighting, etc., then you go like, oh, wow, there's two words that are together. That's one of the most common issues. And the other thing is that sometimes just words get transposed and shifted to where they shouldn't be.
Yeah, I always have to, like, once I accept a change, go back and look at that, because I've had that happen a few times. I did not originally know that Word could track changes, but working with my editors, we go through multiple like editing processes using that, and I'll like have to make sure that it's not shifted over when something's cleared out when you accept it, because and if you go in and add something to the stuff that's already marked there that she added, and it just looks crazy, and then you have to go back and make sure it's not taking out what you want in there. So
Indeed. Going back to this, so what steps can people take to ensure that their book is the best version? What are some of your tricks and tips and stuff that you've had to do? Because they're just words that we consistently make a typo on, and sometimes just clicking, control search, and to find those and double check those words that, sometimes your fingers want to do the cha-cha and just, write things out incorrectly.
I usually, sorry, go ahead, Adam.
I was just going to say, as I'm writing it, I'll have the pro writing aid up there, kind of nudging me, and I can, frankly, I tell it to go pound sand on a pretty frequent basis, but it does help keep me in the technical side of it as well as the storytelling side.
I usually, after I'm done with everything and after I've already gone through all of my proofreading on my own, I will have Word read it to me, because you can hear things much better than you see them. They're not. It's not going to accidentally skip over a word, because it's just going to read whatever is there. So it's a lot easier to catch missing words and things that just don't sound right. Or if you're using the same word over again, you start to hear it. Just like if you're listening to audio narration, you're like, why have they used that word 50 times to describe this? And you're like, oh, it was me. And you go back and you change it. So I find using that is really, really helpful in like the final proofing process.
Yes, that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, the repetitive word thing is something I've had to work on, and I actually had Adam and I had somebody come. They did a book trade with me at Cosign, and he started reading my work that night. But he was like, "Hey, did you know you put like I think it was chocolate in this many sentences close together?" And I was like, I mean, and then I was like, well, I am growing as an author, and it's okay to do that. But I appreciate you pointing that out because that's something I can work on in the future.
Now we all want chocolate.
Yeah. But like
Just hungry that night.
down for me to like when I read over stuff or like going over the editing process, that's something I've had to really work on because you get in that jittery excitement, like, oh, it's almost ready to publish. Let's hurry up and get it done. Yeah, you got to slow down, breathe, and just like take your time with it. And that's something you have to do in general because if you want it to be the finished product and be done like we're talking about, you got to make sure it's the best version of it you can get, and that does require time.
Yeah, reading things back out loud is a great way to kind of pick up on a lot of stuff, and obviously having good alpha readers or beta readers is also important. But like there's some things like the repetitive word thing sometimes. I mean that's a good thing to avoid, but also there's only so many different ways to describe certain things, like chocolate being one of them, and door is another one. And one of those that always makes me laugh whenever I read a book, and I can see where someone's like done a find and replace on door, and they've tried to come up with different ways to describe a door. And it's like sometimes a door is a door, right? Because especially if you're reading fantasy or something, and people start using like portal and other things like this for a door, it's like well, that could mean something else completely than actually like than a door. It's like and sometimes you just got to go with what it is and just say what it is and just leave it. But I think though, as a writer and in the writing stage, when you're working with the alpha readers and beta readers before it goes off to the editor, the most important thing is to focus on if the story works, if the characters work, and if the pace is right, and all those kind of things like story stuff, not the technical grammar, punctuation, word placement, and all that kind of stuff. That's what an editor is for, and that's why you paid for an editor or you work with an editor through the publisher and all that. And that is part of what they look at. Your job is to tell the story and is to get the character arcs in there and to try and do the best that you can do to tell the story that you want to tell. And it's a little bit different when it's a short story and you're submitting it to a submission because they want that kind of a lot of that kind of stuff to be done, and the editing will just be kind of surface level kind of punctuation, grammar, and line proofing. But if you're writing a story and you've paid for an editor, let them do their job and you work with them and you do your job and focus on the important things at that point in time, which is the story and the characters, and don't give yourself too much of a hard time in sifting through the manuscript to find every single error in there. And I see that my stuff is generally it's quite a high level because I use alpha readers and beta readers at the start, but as I write it, I'll write 3 chapters and then my alpha readers will read the 3 chapters and then I'll keep working on it. So stuff gets picked up before I send it over to them. But I'm not an editor. That's not my job. I'm paying for an editor to do the editing work. I'm the writer. I'm telling the story. So it's like and if I'm spending all my time looking for errors and punctuation errors and little words that are spelt wrong, then I'm using my time incorrectly because my job is to tell the story. So
that is a good point, David. Like for real. So spending more time on trying to edit the manuscript when you're paying somebody to do that. I like that because that would actually probably save me more time. And
they have more expertise than we do. That's what they have. Yeah. They're editors. It's one of these things. It's a big misconception that a lot of people have on editors, where the editor is just like someone that comes and tidies up your spelling. It isn't. That's not what that is part of the thing they do, but they're also there to help you craft the story. It's an expertise that they have. Our expertise is telling the stories and is building the characters and building the worlds and building everything else. Their expertise is editing. So let them do it. Right? Yeah, that's what they're there for. So yeah.
Regardless of how bad the comma game sucks for me, that's something that is good to remember. Y'all don't even know the commas. Like I fail miserably when it comes to that. So
the comma game, that sounds like a drinking game. A dangerous one for some
There's
of us.
another missed comma. Let's take a shot. Oh, but there's another one. You would be very, very drunk if you were doing that, reading
Yeah.
my unedited manuscripts.
I think the thing that I tend to do, or the piece of advice I can give, is after you've gotten through part of the editing process, is to go back, or what I try to do is get to critical reader mode. I just sort of pretend that it's not my story, and then I start going through it. My biggest, the biggest things for me to fix are, I'll skip a word in my head. I wrote have, but I've skipped it in the sentence, so I go back and look for those things. And also being too clever. When I'm first writing the scene, it'll be, oh, this is a very clever use of words. I feel really good about myself. But then I go back as a critical reader. I'm like, no, that sounds like crap. What were you doing here? That's sort of how I try and make sure it comes out with the voice and tone that I want, is just to kind of become a critical reader, forget I'm the author, and see if I can find things that would annoy me as a reader, right? If I've done that, then I need to fix it.
True. Have you guys ever read your own books, like physically and for your own pleasure? Madeline's reaction.
Yes, that's how I figured out. Like the very first one I published was like, I'm gonna call it crap because it was. I did not technically. I didn't know. I'll just be honest. I did not use an official like professional editor because I was just starting out. And I did have my mother, who is a teacher, like go over it. Yeah, worst decision ever. She was like, oh, it was your first book. I didn't want to tell you about all the errors. And I'm like, so you let me put this out in the world like this? Mom, come on. Like, you're supposed to be brutally honest with me. I'm your child. You can do that.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yes.
I go back and read my stuff before. If I'm writing a sequel, I'll go back and read the previous stuff. But it's never for pleasure. It's always work mode and just to kind of refresh. And you try and that's the thing. Like to go back into this whole thing of when is something finished. I can reread each one and be like, you know what, I do things differently now than I wrote this first one 2 years ago, or this one I wrote last year, or whatever. Because I've grown as a writer, and I think that's everyone would say the same. Like, you know, there's different choices that you would make, or those different techniques that you've picked up on that you do. But which is interesting because it helps them when you start writing the next book. But it's always, I think it's handy to go back and reread previous books just to kind of get yourself back into that world and just to see what things jump out at you. You're like, not going to do that again.
How about you, Courtney? Has anything jumped out to you that has brought, like, you know, gray hairs out and just, you know, nights without sleep?
Besides my children? No. Not that I can think of. Well, if I read some of the old stuff that I've done, yeah, that's horrible. Or some of my old fan fiction, I never wanted to go through that again. But sometimes I will, like David, if I'm going to be writing a continuation of something, I will go back and read it. It kind of, not as much, I mean, I'll read it for consistency, but I've also got my lists of things that I need to remember. But just kind of to get back into the headspace that I was in while I was writing that, and to get to kind of know the characters again. Because I write a lot of different genres and a lot of different stories at, you know, different times. So it could be like 2 or 3 years since I visited something, and I have to get back into the groove of it, kind of, and just going back and rereading it and going, oh, I shouldn't have done that, but it's already published. I'm going to forget about it and just make the next thing better.
Indeed. Random question, and again, most of these questions are based on stuff that I've done because I've winged. I could open a wing place because I've winged so many things, and I've taken quite a few risks. On one occasion, I had a convention coming up. I was late, and I had to click publish without ordering a proof. Have you ever done that? Have you ever gone, you know, without seeing a physical version of the book? Have you had good experiences, bad experiences? Fortunately, fate has been on my side.
I did one, and I knew, okay, but for the record, I knew everything was like done well, and the person who did my cover specifically did it for Ingram Spark because I've been using Ingram Spark for this series. But yeah, Blue Flames, I did that without getting a proof of it. And they came in right before I went to co-sign, and they're perfect. Honestly, I got very lucky because I was like, I really want these to be in, so I'm just going to like super quickly get them done. And yeah, because this was actually the first one that I formatted myself, and it turned out really good. So, but I did do like a preview of it online. Not that it ever matches up that way sometimes, but I mean, yeah, that was my first like official, let's just do this. So
I've done it several times, and usually it works out great. I had one time when the spine was too small, and it had a person on the spine, and like half their head was cut off. So that didn't work out so good, but I only ordered 10 copies, so I wasn't too bummed about that, and I got to give them to readers for like cheaper and for giveaways and stuff like that. So people still got to read the book, so it ended up fine. But if you can, try to get a proof. But most of the time, especially on Ingram Spark, it turns out fine if you just look at the digital proof and see that it looks all right.
Yeah, the first one that the first novella in the Cassidy Chronicles, which, again, this is something that came out 11 years ago. That went out without a proof in hand. And then I got a proof. And I haven't done that since because, damn.
Yeah, it's a different one working with a publisher because so the first book that I did that came out in Solitude Shadow was we had that like it was quite a long we worked on it we had a lot of time. The deadlines were quite long deadlines and everything, and the publisher managed to get like proofs sent to them and everything like that. But the sequel, Path of War, there was just a lot of stuff kind of going on, so it was kind of last minute for a lot of stuff. So that was one of them where there was no time for a proof before it was to come out. But in both instances, anyway, I don't get the proof before the publisher does. It's always one of those things where you kind of have to be like waiting for someone else to kind of look through it and spot things. So it's always, I usually always get mine when everyone else does, and I'm like kind of looking at it going, I hope this is okay. But like Path of War was a big one because it's quite a big book, and it was quite a high pressure situation getting down to the wire where it was supposed to come out and everything. And when they all arrived, were the ones that I was supposed to be sending to people that had pre-ordered it, the pre-ordered like signed copies and what have you. I was like, I really hope that there is no mistakes in these books. Otherwise, like I'm gonna have to order like a whole new batch of them. But thankfully, they were okay.
So another random question: have you ever read a book that you honestly think shouldn't have been published? Without naming names or authors or stuff like that, we don't want to mudsling, etc. But there are books that sometimes have like major issues that you go like, it's either the plot, either the dialogue, or everything. On one occasion, one book that I saw, it had been put in a text translator and no one had checked it, and wow, that was interesting.
Loads of times.
You mean terrible?
Yeah, terrible is definitely like it. So I'm just gonna hop on this and go for it because before I started writing books, I would have people reach out to have me review their books, and I guess you could, which I still kind of do, but like review their books and leave feedback on them and stuff. And I'm like, I mean, now I'm like, okay, if the book interests me, I'll do it, but like I don't just willy-nilly like, hey, do you want to read this? Here's a copy. Because I came across one and I felt so bad, but I was like, I couldn't finish it because like I don't know if it was translated from a different language to English, or if they didn't just like they couldn't spell, or like they didn't know how sentences were supposed together. But it was terrible, and it was just like in the first couple pages, I was like, I cannot, like this makes no sense like this, like. And I told them, I was like, I can't finish this. You've got to do a lot of work, and it was already published. And it was just like, how?
Yeah, I mean, there's books that I've read that I've just not enjoyed, and that's like a subjective thing, and that's one of those things. But there's other books that I've read where, and a lot of them are anthologies, to be fair, that where the formatting is not great, and the covers aren't great, and then there's lots, and I'm kind of forgiving about typos and mistakes like that because I know they happen, but it gets to a point where there's a threshold where it becomes distracting. But like for me, like I do kind of review quite a lot of stuff, and if it's something that I can't finish, which is rare, because I usually force myself to finish anything that I start because of my brain. But if it's something that I can't finish, or I would give less than 3 stars, I just wouldn't review it. And but if it's someone that I know or someone who's involved in it, and if they want to know, I'll tell them privately and say, look, this is it. But I would never put it on Goodreads or Amazon or even like on my own social media that I've read a book that I didn't enjoy. I just don't mention it really because it's hard, It's and a lot of it is subjective, and you don't want to kind of give people that kind of a kick in sometimes and just say this is a book, because someone else might read it and have no problem with it whatsoever, and that's perfectly okay.
I think
I ran into a situation once. Another indie author asked me to read over their book, and I said, sure, happy to, and I started reading it, and I think I managed about 40 pages before the grind of poor grammar, poor sentence structure, tenses jumping from past to present to future in the same sentence. I mean, it was a mess. It was an absolute mess. And I talked to them later and said, look, you need to go back and you really pointed out what I found. And they said, and they did. They took it down and they went and they made it better. So I felt good about that. I didn't feel good about what I had to say to them, but the way it was when it was up, it was unreadable.
Sean, we're going to say something on this?
Yeah. So I think probably when I read an indie author stuff, I give it more leeway not because I think less of indie authors. Actually, I think there's some incredible authors who are indie authors. And I'll be one day too. But I think that there is less, like David talks about, there's a lot less hands in the process. So when I see, and I won't name names, but I will name series, I've read or I used to read a lot of the Star Trek novels, and many of them are really good. But there were a few that I was puzzled at how this, because Penguin has always been very specific about their requirements for authors who want to write for Star Trek. And I was like, how did this particular book get published? Mostly because the characterizations were terrible, for one, and then the plots were pretty thin. So it was a mixed bag, and I've always wondered, like, how did there were some amazing novels, and then there were some not so amazing novels, and it always bugged me in that regard. But I think I'm pretty forgiving as a reader. I will read even books that are not that are poorly written. There's very few books I put down and said, "Oh, I just can't read this." But especially if I can find something good about it, right? Maybe the grammar is terrible, but the plot's fantastic, or maybe the plot's terrible, but the characters are a lot of fun. So I try to focus on the positive things. And same thing with reviews for like gaming, RPG books and things like that, especially for people who are basically doing it by themselves. They have to be their own writer, their own editor, their own art person, their own formatting person, their own marketer, and it's a lot of work. So when I would review something like that, I might mention some of the bits that were not perfect, but I know what and maybe that makes me not a good reviewer. I don't know, but I would always focus on the good things. Like if it was a really cool idea or module or adventure that just had some grammatical or formatting issues, I would hype up the good parts barely mention the bad parts, trying to be fair to the person, to the author or authors.
That's
I
a
think that
great
can
way to
happen.
review. Sorry.
Yeah, I think that can happen with intellectual properties. Other people writing in other universes, sometimes they need to pump out a book, and it's like, it's not great. You were going to say something, Courtney.
Oh, I was going to say that's a great way to review. I think, focus, especially for reviewing indie, to focus on the positive and mention constructive criticism. But as far as stuff that I've seen, of course I am also an editor, so I have been submitted many things over the past 5 or 6 years that I've been editing, and some of them are just really not ready for publication. And I hate when I have to tell someone, we really need to either go to a developmental edit on this or something, because this is just not working. But there have been some that I've gotten that are just, they're very derivative of other very famous works or something. Like one of them could have been a Marvel movie. I don't even uses like the Marvel characters. And I'm like, we really can't publish this because you're going to get sued. So I've seen a lot of crazy things over the years. And I think that would probably be the one that was basically a Marvel movie was probably like the most unpublishable thing that I've seen.
You didn't tell me that when you emailed me back. You said you loved it.
It wasn't yours, David.
That's definitely rough. Okay, one last question before we go to the indie connection. Do you think that the criteria changes depending on the genre? If you write in more than one genre, do you think that it's easier in one genre versus another? Also, if you write poetry or essays or stuff like that, again, this could be a whole other hour, but just touch on it. Do you think anything's easier, or is everything just a pain in the ass?
It's all a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
But really, like,
Yeah.
I don't think there is an easier one, because they all have their challenges, and they all have a certain way that it needs to be done, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I just kind of find like
English, you
I just kind of find it. I like deadlines, to be honest with you, and I find if I have a deadline for something, and that's why for short stories or anthologies, they usually have submission dates. And when I'm working, like if I'm working with a publisher for a novel, they will have we'll decide on deadlines for that as well. And I like that, because that's basically, it gives you that point where it's like it has to be finished by this date. And with that in mind, that nothing is ever really finished, you could continually, you could be Patrick Rothfuss working on the Stone Door for 12 years and another 12 years on top of that, or George Martin working on Winds of Winter for a decade. We could all do that, not happily, but we could all do it. And nothing is ever finished, really. We could keep iterating on it, but having that deadline or that submission date is a great way to be like, look, you have to bring it to an end at some point. And then, when we, especially with novels and what have you, when we say this is the end and we type the end and we send it away, there is still a process after that. There is developmental edits, there is proof, there's line edits, there's working with beta readers. So it's not really the end until it's in people's hands. And then even at that point, you can go back and change things as well. You can change covers, you can change any mistakes that people pick up on. You can do different versions of them, as many people do. I mean, The Hobbit was a very, very different book until Lord of the Rings came out, and Tolkien went back and rewrote the Riddles in the Dark chapter and some other key parts of it to match Lord of the Rings more. So nothing is ever really finished, and these days we have a lot of options to go back to tweak the work afterwards. But if I didn't have deadlines to work to, I think I would just keep working and working and working and never ever ever publish anything.
You'd be like Peter Gabriel. You would take 20 years to release a new album.
I would. I'd lose myself in it completely. I would be 75 years old and I'd be like, what happened with my life? I have this big manuscript that is perfect, but there's one sentence that I need to work on still.
Indeed. Sometimes you just got to pull the trigger. But speaking of pulling the trigger, we could keep going on and on and on and on. Unfortunately, time is money, money is time, and there's a certain time that we have to show the indie connection with Courtney Cannon. If you like Anne of Green Gables or have it on your TBR, which I actually do for this year, by all means, check this out.
Hey guys, CL
Cannon here from Fiction Atlas Press, bringing you another Indie Connection. This week, I'd like to tell you about some indies that you might enjoy if you are a fan of Anne of Green Gables by LM Montgomery. The first book I have for you is called Diana of Orchard Slope by Libby Hawker. Growing up is never easy. It's even harder when you have a mother who doesn't understand, a nagging sense of self-doubt, and a secret crush you can't confess, not even to your bosom friend. L.M. Montgomery's timeless classic, Anne of Green Gables, has been reimagined from the perspective of Diana Barry, Anne's best friend and kindred spirit. As Diana and Anne navigate the path from childhood to their grown-up lives, parents, schoolmates, and Anne's well-meaning blunders contrive to keep them apart. But two girls destined for lifelong friendship can't be separated so easily, can they? The second book I have for you is called Marilla Before Anne by Louise Mikolos. Marilla Cuthbert was 52 years old when the plucky red-headed Anne Shirley came to live with her and her brother Matthew at Green Gables Farm on Prince Edward Island. A seemingly cold and dour spinster, her heart eventually softens to the lovable orphan girl. But for over a century, readers have wondered, who was Marilla before Anne? In this remarkable debut novel, readers are introduced to a spirited 18-year-old Marilla Cuthbert, a girl not unlike Anne herself, who is desperately in love and whose whole life is spread before her. But when a moment of defiance brings life-changing consequences, a new Marilla begins to take shape, one who would learn to bear tragedy like a birthright, and loss as an inevitability, and who would hold steadfast to the secrets that could shatter the lives of everyone around her. The third book I have for you is called The Hired Girl by Laura Amy Schultz. 14-year-old Joan Scraggs, just like the heroines in her beloved novels, yearns for a real life and true love. But what hope is there for adventure, beauty, or art on a hardscrabble farm in Pennsylvania, where the work never ends? Over the summer of 1911, Joan pours her heart out into her diary as she seeks a new, better life for herself. Because maybe, just maybe, a hired girl cleaning and cooking for $6 a week can become what a farm girl could only dream of. A woman with a future. And the last book I have for you is called House of Dreams, The Life of L.M. Montgomery by Liz Rosenberg. Once upon a time, there was a girl named Maud who adored stories. When she was 14 years old, Maud wrote in her journal, "I love books. I hope when I grow up to be able to have lots of them." Not only did Maud grow up to own lots of books, she wrote 24 of them herself as L.M. Montgomery, the world-renowned author of Anne of Green Gables. For many years, not a great deal was known about Maud's personal life. Her childhood was spent with strict, undemonstrative grandparents, and her reflections of writing, her lifelong struggles with anxiety and depression, her year of mad passion, and her difficult married life remained locked away, buried deep within her unpublished personal journals. Through this revealing and deeply moving biography, kindred spirits of all ages, who, like Maud, never gave up the substance of things hoped for, will be captivated anew by the words of this remarkable woman. Okay, that's all for me this week. I'll see you next week on the Indie Connection. Bye!
I kind of love that. And I do plan on reading Anne of Green Gables in one of these so that I can compare and contrast. Thank you for joining us. Before we do the closing comments on this topic, I did want to mention that Ron Lahr is back with season 2 of Indie Mayhem on Monday night. And on Tuesday, Mean Reviews, because the man doesn't stop. Thank you for the assistance with that, the wonderful Madilynn Dale. I was like, where are the overlays? I can't find them. So yeah, before we sign off, any final thoughts? Any final thoughts that you have on this topic, or the last thing that you want to tell someone, and at the same time, late night news? Oh Lord, it's already February. Where did this?
Sorry, just like pulling these up because I forget. So
I
help
forget.
it out as best as I can.
No, I forget too. Thanks for the assist. I was like, where are they? They're a bunch of numbers and stuff like that, and I just couldn't figure it out. So closing thoughts, and so that people know where to find you, let's start with Courtney and work our way up until we go with our final 5 minutes.
Closing thoughts, nothing's ever going to be perfect, and everybody has different tastes, so just try your best, try to put the best book that you can out there, and then keep doing that, and you'll eventually be successful. It just depends on, you keep trying, and eventually you'll get somewhere with it, I hope. You can find me at this link in bio that I can never point to. It's got all my social media. You can go to clcanon.net. You can go to fiction-atlas.com. I'm all over the web except for Snapchat. And I've got that new Kickstarter coming out for Incantation, which is a YA fantasy sort of book that has all kinds of stories about libraries on it, like magical libraries. Mine is about two thieves that are trying to steal a book from a magical library that it's actually cursed, so it's a lot of fun. But we're going to have a really nice hardback and lots of cool incentives for the Kickstarter. It starts, I think, the 1st of March or something. I don't know. I'll have to look that up. But had a great time. On to the next person.
So, yes, you can find me at my website, CassidyChronicles.com. Nice comment from AC about the magical library there. Like Sean said, perfect is the enemy of the good. So at some point, you're going to have to stop. Otherwise, it's never going to get out there. Just, do the best you can. Listen to your editors. Listen to your beta readers. Listen, take that feedback and keep improving. Yeah. So on to the next.
I'm horribly distracted by Courtney's magical library. I want to know all about this story. You have to tell us everything about it. So you can find me at davidgreenwriter.com. And all of my books and social media stuff are all on there. Just what everyone else has said, just do the best that you can and use all the resources that you have available to you, whatever they may be, and just try and come up with the best story that you can, and don't try to make it perfect, and don't be too harsh on yourself if you find, or someone finds, one or two little mistakes. It's not the end of the world.
You can find my blogging at and all information for SM Hillman at thewickedboys.com. I think the best advice I could probably give, or the last advice, hopefully the best, would be to take a chance with every story and every book you write. If it's 90%, steady, regular stuff, take 10% of the story and play with it. Break some rules, break grammar rules, break sentence structure rules. Just do it on purpose, right? Don't, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But take chances, and just, every new story you write is going to be better than the last one. So.
Before we're going to Madilynn, my name is JD Estrada. I've been your host, your haphazard host for this afternoon. You can find me on the socials at JD Estrada. Hey, I did the pointing thing right. Yeah, it's possible. Last piece of advice: if you want to find typos in your book, publish it, and you'll definitely find it within a week. And beyond that, don't sweat it. People will always have comments. Again, perfection is the enemy of progress. And eventually it'll just get easier. You'll get better. And if you mess up, it's a good story to share. So now let's go to the final 5 minutes with Miss Madilynn Dale.
Hey guys. So spending the last 5 with me. Blue Flames is officially out on Tuesday, the 31st. Like I mentioned at the start of the show, that is my son's birthday, and I'm having a big party in my Facebook group. It's the Chapter Goddess, Madilynn Dale's reader group. You can find it on Facebook. And hop in. It's going to be a fun day. And before I jump into it, I just want to share this is the new short story cover. I have that will drop on February 11th. It was actually published in an anthology that I was able to share. But yeah, so Blue Flames, you can order signed author copies from me. Just reach out. You can use contact stuff on my website, thechaptergoddess.com. But yeah, so Ember she barely escaped hell in book 1 with her life. And she's back. She's with her pack. She's got all this new information in her head. And Lucifer now knows she exists, so she's on borrowed time. But I'm picking up, this is the first chapter of the book, and I'll just read a little bit of it. I may not get through all of it, but I hope you guys enjoy, so just hang tight. Chapter 1. The smell of garbage fills the air around me as I run on 4 paws toward Corey while he struggles to fight back, a winged creature. Bloody gouges cover his side where it's gotten him, but it won't hurt him much longer. Stupid imp, why don't you pick on someone your own size? I send out my thoughts and it whips its head toward me, letting out a snarl. I try not to panic as more fly from the trees, but instead push my fear down. With a roar, I launch myself at it, snapping my jaws around its head. With a yank, I rip it off and spit it on the ground. Corey shakes himself, the wounds already starting to heal along his wolf's coat. Thanks, Em. Did you bring backup? I found a nest of them. Yeah, Adam and Zeke were right behind me with a few other betas. I snarl at the imps gathered around us before sending out a pulse of power that pushes them back. It surprises them, causing several to stumble and fall over. But the imps recover quickly. They know better than to push a hellhound too far. A group of wolves and 2 vampires burst through the trees, pulling the imps' attention away from us momentarily. I keep my eyes on the group as they grab the imps closest to them, tearing them limb from limb. The wolves move past the vamps and snag the imps, attempting to fly off with their massive jaws. This gives Corey and me time to regroup. Once he's ready, we launch into the attack ourselves. The imps scream and screech as our group works through them, tearing them to pieces. As the last imp is taken out, a light breeze lets me know Zeke is at my side. He rests his hand on my shoulder as I continue to glare at the bodies lying around us. You could probably torch them all now, love, he states, patting my side as if I were a puppy. I shake my fair response and turn my head to look at him. The imps have continued to terrorize our pack more since I've been back. I can't help but wonder if it's not one of those triplet generals pushing them on us. I know only one of them was taken down in my escape from hell. Okay, I will. Everyone step back so you don't get hit by my flames. It's convenient you can do that, you know? Seth, one of our pack's lead betas, says from somewhere in the clearing. I have to agree, it's made things a lot easier since you've gotten back, Adam huffs from where he stands across the clearing. I appreciate the sport, guys, but let's get this over with. I huff and call it my magic. I plant my paws into the soft earth at my feet and glance around to make sure I won't set any trees on fire. I let my flames loose. The black fire bursts forth from my jaws and eats the imps' bodies away to black ash that drifts to the earth in seconds. It leaves scorch marks where they once were, and thankfully it's nothing too bad. Grass will one day cover it. Well, that's done, Corey says cheerily, and I huff in response. They act like using my magic is some easy feat. Really, it exhausts me, and my energy reserves are now on E. I let out a yawn, wishing I could be done with this day, but knowing I can't be. Yes, let's head back. Is there anything you guys want me to teach you today? I turn and feel Zeke stay at my side. His warmth and scent are calming. The others fall in line behind us as we make the trek back to the pack house. I'm thankful that so far the imps have kept to the woods. It's helped us keep it a secret from the normal humans. They might think the apocalypse was coming if they saw all these demons. Even I question it sometimes with the amount of them showing up. Corey and Adam swear it wasn't this bad until I got back. Maybe just a few drills to help the younger ones some more. Your sisters have been showing excellent advancement compared to the others. I may move them up soon, Seth voices. He's taken over training us all more in depth since I got back. He received special permission from Alpha Gale to step off patrol duty to do so. Alpha Gale approved reluctantly. He's been awfully standoffish since I returned. He's also stopped pushing the contract between Adam and me, yet he won't destroy it. I refuse to acknowledge the contract, and Adam respects my wishes. He also chooses to ignore it. We agree it holds no sway over us anymore. I'm a completely different person after being dragged to hell against my will and making a narrow escape. I've only been back a few days, but it seems like forever ago that I was there. I know my days are numbered, and I'll have to return soon, but I'm pushing to do all that I can before I go. This pack needs to be strong for the divide that's coming. Adam has been looking into past records regarding pack occurrences and titles dating back to the time when he was born and his mother's death shortly after. It turns out that Corey's dad was still in training at that time, so he's off the hook for being involved with his mother's sacrifice. I still find it hard to believe that Alpha Gale sacrificed his mate for power. Who in their right mind does that? Mates are supposed to be a forever thing. It had to have been painful in more ways than one. Losing a mate is like losing half of your soul. Also, strangely, there were only a handful of betas close to Alpha Gale at the time. Most of them are dead, but 2 remain. One is Beta Ralph Ward, who continues to guard the pack house, and another is a male who left the pack shortly after the time of the sacrifice. His name is Onyx Lane, and he lives a couple of states over in Louisiana. The records don't list a town, but we're working to find him. With as much technology in existence today, there has to be some way to track him down. I'm pleased they're doing so well, but I'm worried my family may be targeted more after my escape, I say, and several growls fill the air. We've kept the bit about me being Lucifer's daughter on the down low as much as possible. We told Seth in hopes that we could trust him with the secret. He's vital in keeping everyone safe and has vowed to do everything he can to teach the pack what it needs for when the time comes, that there will be a massive attack. The Vamps, on the other hand, know who I am. With Zeke being their prince, he made them vow to tell no one. They are very loyal to their kingdom. Half of the pack was on board for the more intense training at all levels. Those who aren't for it were given the option to stick with the lighter schedule in place before. That way, they're still learning what they need to, but they won't be the pack's main attack and defense. So I'm going to cut it off there, guys, because I know we're running short on time, but to find out what happens with Ember and her pack, whether she's taken back to hell and accepts her place there, you'll have to grab the book and check it out. It is still available for pre-order for 99 cents, and book 1, Black Flames, is also 99 cents right now. So grab you a copy, and remember to hit that like button and subscribe while you're here. Also, it's always time to go indie now, guys.